Thanks, Kadem. I'm just going to share my screen now. Everyone see that? I'll take tacit consent as an agreement. Thanks, everyone. My name is Ruchika Deora, and I'm really delighted to have been asked to speak at today's session, Managing Diverse Ecosystems and Stakeholders. As Kadem mentioned, I've got over 20 years of experience in energy and electricity. And I thought I'd spend this time taking you through some tips that I've picked up along the way. These are really useful in contextualizing what stakeholder relationships mean, and I've categorized these into 3 areas. One is, what do you want to be when you grow up? 2 is, do you hear what I hear? And 3 is quid pro quo. And we'll spend a little bit of time on each topic. So what do you want to be when you grow up? And I think throughout my life, I've wanted to be a ballerina, an astronaut, an AIDS researcher, a human rights lawyer, product manager, chief marketing officer, and a CEO. And along the way, I've also considered being an econometrician or a small business consultant and a park ranger. Many of these were influenced by my upbringing, my likes and interests at a particular time, and frankly, sometimes by the Kardashians, because seriously, if Kylie Jenner can be the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar empire, I feel like anyone can lead. Leadership wasn't ever really articulated in a way that resonated with me personally. Never sat down and thought outright that I wanted to lead. I have taken courses on how to manage different personalities and how to lead a team and how to drive business strategy. But personally, it was more that you should do your best at whatever it is that you want to do. And it was the what I want to do bit that was the part that I really struggled with. What I've learned over the course of my career is how I create value, what gives me a sense of purpose and deep satisfaction, and how I can leverage that skill to create customer and shareholder value. And for me, I like to understand challenges and to build customer solutions to drive revenue creation. It's like solving a puzzle. It also affords me the opportunity to continuously learn new things. And I get bored when I'm not learning. I really thrive in an environment where I don't know much. And that's one of the reasons why whatever I do, wherever I go, I can slot into cultures easily and quickly professionally. So I wanted to examine a couple of things around what is it around creating value, and that giving up something valuable to receive something else that's more valuable to you is creating value. And once you understand what you want out of any relationship and what it is that you have to give in return, you can start to manage your stakeholders. And stakeholder, I think, in general is a really funny word. It's just people or groups of people. That's what stakeholders are. And I remember when I realized that stakeholders were just people. My husband and I were touring the hospital where I was going to give birth to my first child. And at the end of the tour, they split the group into men and women for an ice-breaking exercise. And they asked each group to brainstorm what each partner needed to do once it was time to go to the hospital. And for the women, it was items like remember your breathing and your bag and your nightgown, et cetera. And for their partners, it was make sure the car is full of petrol and you've got multiple routes mapped out for the hospital. Until the very last item where I recognized my husband's handwriting that said notify key stakeholders, literally in that language, i.e. the grandparents. And everyone lost it. Everyone thought it was hysterical because who refers to family members as key stakeholders? But he's a consultant and that's what they are. They are people at the end of the day. And they have their own needs and perspectives, and we need to manage them in order to succeed. So the next key point is listening. Listening is the single most important skill in creating value. You know that the adage of the smartest person in the room is usually the quietest, and it's likely because they're busy listening. And when they do speak, they have the advantage of incorporating and synthesizing everything that has already been said into meaningful next steps and solutions. You have to listen and listen carefully to create value. Sorry, I hope that doesn't pop up on my screen. As a leader, your responsibility is to quickly contextualize the problems or challenges and identify trends and opportunities that create value for the organization. And you're going to be presented with situations in the midst of innumerable clutter that you're going to have to provide pathways forward for. So you have to listen to what people are saying and cut through that clutter. People aren't going to ever come to you with a clear problem set handed to you on a platter, and business cases aren't going to be presented without bias. This isn't a nefarious thing. It's human nature to contextualize issues from within your own purview, but resources are scarce and you will need to bear it for your own team. And there are two areas where listening is paramount in leadership. One, when it comes to motivating your team to get the best performance, and two, when it comes to influencing others to advance your own projects and programs. And rarely do people do both well. Firstly, no one will come out and tell you what their personal and professional motivations are, partially because it's really blunt and partially because very few people have an accurate understanding of what these motivations truly are. I'm never going to say, hi, my name is Ruchika, or excuse me, hi, my name is Ruchika. I get a deep sense of satisfaction from knowledge sharing and creating a more fair and just corporate world. That's bollocks. My name is Ruchika and I'm motivated by personal glory and remuneration. The latter is never going to happen. And when I was managing a team of 15 people, I remember getting really frustrated and eventually mapping their motivations against their capabilities and goals, and then determining a strategy to invest in, manage up, keep happy, and manage out for each individual. And it worked like a treat. Anytime I was struggling with a personality situation or how to engage with one of these people, I reminded myself of the end game, and I was able to manage my way through it. Influencing laterally or managing up can definitely be trickier, and this is more of a political field in nature. You're advocating for resources, whether it's budget or time or people. And I'll talk more about managing this group in the next section, but the key takeaway is, if you don't take the time to understand the why of people's behaviors, then it's going to be really hard, if not impossible, to influence to your advantage. You need to watch and listen to people, how they behave in meetings and conversations, and what and how they present to understand the political or internal stakeholder dynamics at play. You need to understand the opportunity cost of other projects at stake and how to mitigate the internal stakeholder risk by vetting your ideas and your business cases prior to presenting. During this time, listen intently and understand the perspectives and goals of those from whom you seek feedback. Sit down, map your stakeholders, and map the benefits that your program, project, initiative, or whatever you have to offer has to them, and then sell the hell out of it. And finally, quid pro quo, something for something. As mentioned earlier, value creation is all about giving something valuable to receive something else that's more valuable to you. It's a two-way street with stakeholders. You give, you get. And it's not always immediate. You might be able to bank your goodwill with stakeholders for use at a later time. But it's very important that you understand how to manage your political capital within an organization. And you need to regularly deposit and withdraw. It's particularly relevant for managing relationships with your peers and also with higher ups. The higher you go, the more political your relationships will become. Some people are excellent at building goodwill and really kind of stink at withdrawing it. I'm a primary example of that. People who consistently withdraw without reciprocating, they fast earn negative reputations, and likely they'll go no further than being a big fish in a small pond. But in order to manage your political bank effectively, you need to build relationships with people you trust and who can provide solid but soft feedback. And more importantly, you also need to build relationships with people you might not like or even trust. In order to be an effective leader, you have to find ways of connecting with those whom you do not see eye to eye with and possibly don't even like. Seek out people from across the business in a broad range of functional areas and discuss what you're doing, learn what their annual and strategic priorities are, network internally. This will come in useful when you need to present at a board level or looking for feedback on the strategic positioning of a project proposal. So in conclusion, I think there are just really three things that you can do to be an effective leader when it comes to managing your stakeholders. And that's understand your value and what you derive value from. It's really critical to being able to exchange that which you create for something that you require. Ask questions and listen with intent. You need to dig deep to find the meaning in your conversations and identify where mutual value creation can exist. And be as generous with your skills and resources as you can be to build your bank of personal capital. And then finally, just remember that stakeholders and stakeholder groups are made of people. The better you understand the people around you, the better you can navigate your landscape to work effectively. So with that, I am done with the speech portion, but I'm happy to take any questions from the group.
Thank you, Ruchika. And well, maybe people get warmed up. I'll maybe start with the question around, in kind of, if you take the last year or two, can you share an experience where you found it challenging to work with different stakeholders that may have a different language, but you didn't have like I think generally if you meet one-on-one and you have the time, it's kind of easy. But do you have a case where it was multiple stakeholders that you had to kind of take on a journey without having that one-on-one time?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, particularly obviously the challenges of the past year. A lot of our meetings, I sit within corporate affairs, and a lot of our meetings, both with our media and our customer engagement and our stakeholder engagement, were sort of indefinitely postponed, and we felt that impact quite critically. I mean, I think everyone kept saying, okay, we'll just meet when this sort of cloud lifts, and we kept postponing meetings. And inevitably, we ended up, meeting via Zoom and trying to take, I think, multiple people on journeys at different times can be a real big challenge, because if you can establish a baseline with a group of people, particularly in person, where they can kind of feed off of each other in terms of questions and understanding, and again, that sort of opportunity to create solutions and value in a room in sort of a workshop, we definitely missed that. There are several examples I can think of. We are redoing our internal website, and where we would have, not internal, our external website, but where we would have had multiple workshops across stakeholder groups to bring people together, take them on the journey of what a customer journey looks like for a distribution company, and sort of lay the foundations for thinking about content consumption digitally in a different way. It didn't happen, and as a result of that, I think the project in terms of timeline got extended significantly. We're still working on it when it should have gone live 4 or 5 months ago. But again, it kind of goes back to, had we taken the time to, instead of do those workshops, taking people through identifying the key stakeholders that held sort of those positions of power, or that really needed to be informed, and were able to take them through it individually, we absolutely could have avoided that.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Before I continue with more questions, anyone from online? Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to ask one if I could.
Sure.
Hi, Ruchika, that was really interesting, a really nice summary. Thanks for that. I'm just curious about what you might suggest about how to build relationships with people that perhaps you don't trust. I mean, you actually raised that as a particular kind of use case. So I'd be very interested in your thoughts on that.
It is difficult, right? I mean, because I think we naturally gravitate towards people that are like-minded, and we feed off of that sort of energy potentially, right? Like I can get together with I work for a distribution company currently, and there are some people within the organization I can get together with and wax lyrical about the change in the energy sector and how we need to become more customer centric and what that means for us in the DSO landscape. And then there are others that, within the organization or higher up, that don't maybe share that purview, or that are much more into empire building. And I think looking at those people perhaps myopically and saying, okay, that's somebody that I don't necessarily trust that person, either because they aren't aligned to my particular agenda, or because I've had an experience where, for example, things haven't gone well in a project. That saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. I mean, I hate to put it as bluntly as that, but it is kind of like that. There are a lot of people that will exist within an organization that have, again, political clout or access to resources that you don't have. And you might not agree with any number of things, their management style, their position about the industry, what have you. But you're going to have to work with them, and you're going to have to establish a relationship with them where you can, vet ideas or bring them into the fold around a particular project. In terms of ways of overcoming that, I have found that one way to engage with certain types of people is to frankly ask for their advice, because everyone loves being considered a subject matter expert at something. So going to them and saying, I've got this project. I'd love to get your feedback on this particular brief, or this how we can position this, or what have you. And again, listen to their feedback. I think is one of the ways that you might be able to manage a challenge like that. You sort of always want to guard yourself in some ways with those people. You want to be smart about that interaction. But you also want to be, authentic and solicit their feedback and bring them into the fold, because that's going to be an easier path to your success than, having them sort of outside the loop, depending again on their position and power.
Okay,
It's
thanks.
an interesting question, because in a way it came up from an experience that John in the first event spoke about, where he had investors that he says now in hindsight he probably wouldn't have gone with them.
Mm.
And the way I remember him phrasing it is around the values.
Yeah.
So sometimes, if there's a trust issue, and I'm jumping in here, I think there's a lot of it's a very important question. But what he was saying is try to understand their values, where they are coming from. Is it just a matter of communication, or are they really against? Are they really an enemy, or are they just have a different perspective on it, and then try to work from there?
That's such a great point, Kadem, because it's circumstantial as well, right? I'm speaking very specifically from a corporate perspective in terms of trying to get maybe a project or a business case across the line. If you're talking about investors, if you truly feel like that value alignment isn't there, and that you can't get to a point where you understand what their motivation is and that aligns with your values, then you need to make different decisions about how you engage in that relationship.
Yep.
Cool. If someone else is jumping, I'll add another question of let's call it kind of the tricks of the trade, in a way, kind of what tools or approaches that are very practical that you found very useful. The easy example is meeting for coffee. I think that's always, given what you said, that's always good. What else would you add as kind of suggestions?
Yeah, I think internal networking is something that oftentimes people perhaps don't put as much importance on, as much as everyone talks about networking. It can be external networking. Again, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, internal networking is something that we should take the time to invest in. And internal networking, particularly with senior members of your organization, right? I mean, very rarely, even if you just say to the CFO, "Hey, I'd like to take you for a cup of coffee," they're not going to say no. And the 15 minutes of you asking them a little bit about their career and how they got to where they were, and if they have any potential career advice, does several things. One, again, it allows them to get to know you a little bit better, to know that you are someone that has the nous to be able to engage with people at multiple levels. And then also it keeps you front of mind. So if an opportunity for either career progression or again, a business case analysis comes up internally, then they've got you, again, it's building your political capital. So that's one thing I would recommend. I think also anything that you can do, like I said, be generous with your time. That's both internally and externally. And not all of us have the luxury of doing that. I mean, I have two small kids, so I've sort of been out of the game for a little bit now. And some people can empathize, and some people, have a little bit more free time to be able to go and network internally and externally. But I think even, whether it's mentoring or whether it's being mentored, whether it's writing, whatever the case may be, I think being generous with your knowledge, I'm a firm believer of, sort of put that good energy and that knowledge out there, and it'll come back to you. Does that answer the question a little bit?
Yeah, it's good. And cool, we've got a few more minutes for questions. I'm sure we got at least two questions. We've got a very smart audience. Okay, I'll ask, I guess, from your experience and journey in life, is there any lesson or quote or something that somebody said that for you kind of really opened up an idea or made you realize, this is something like a principle I should really follow and apply this kind of in this topic?
I really do like that whole the calmest person in the room and the quietest person in the room is sort of the smartest. I mean, I think you don't want to take that too literally, because if you are the smartest person in the room, there's that also phrase, you should find a different room. So I think it's important for anyone to, again, take on board that listening is a skill and that not everybody does it well. And that it's not just listening to what the person is saying, but it's listening to how they're saying and contextualizing it within the broader context of what's going on in the market, what's going on in the industry, what's going on internally politically as well. Because again, that's where the value creation occurs, in terms of saying, I went to this meeting and people were talking about the challenges operationally that they're experiencing around this product delivery. And I went to this meeting and, it was a P&L overview of where we are and aren't, identifying new streams of revenue. And I went to this meeting and it was, a customer focused group just screaming for something differently. Your ability to pull that all together and identify the area of opportunity is what's going to make you stand out as a leader. Leaders, particularly at senior levels, they need to be more than subject matter experts, right? You have to have a broad range of expertise, and that includes, a little bit of marketing, a little bit of stakeholder engagement, a little bit of P&L, a little bit of, operational experience. The nous that you have to have across everything is pretty robust. So I think if you take the time to develop some of those skills, particularly listening, it's a small thing to do, but it can really help demonstrate value and build your reputation and your credence and your brand, which I know is something that I think Andrew's going to talk a little bit more about. And then also, stakeholder mapping. Stakeholder mapping can come across as like this really overwhelming task to do. It's like, I'm not going to sit down with an Excel spreadsheet every time I've got to, do a pitch or do a project or something like that. But even just mentally taking the time to identify, this person I think is motivated by accomplishing this, and this person seems to be motivated by accomplishing this. It's really critical to being successful in your objectives as a leader, whether you're trying to push a project up the line or whether you're trying to manage people underneath you.
Cool. Thanks for that. And I guess last question, a similar question that John was asked last time, is on a skill. What do you think from this angle? What is a skill that people should aim to develop or invest the time on development?
Look, I think to be honest with you, again, the art of a cup of coffee, right? I mean, I think people get intimidated by networking, or people get intimidated by having a conversation with somebody within the organization that maybe is outside of their functional area. And, develop like 3 open-ended questions that you can ask somebody to get the conversation going. How did you end up in the industry? How long have you been in the role? Or what do you like most about the role? Really high-level things just to get the conversation going, and then you can steer the conversation towards the direction of the project or the outcomes that you want. It's there's another full of colloquialisms today, but you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. So people want to be around people that are helpful, that are generous. Not overly so, but I think there's a balance that you need to strike, which is why I was also talking about, you need to build up your personal capital, but you also need to spend it. There's no point in having like, oh, she's the nicest person and she's really, really great. But if you're not using that to your advantage, whatever your particular goals are, whether they're professional advancement or, again, getting resource funding for something, then I don't know, it's ineffectual, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And almost on the last point, we actually got a question from the participants. So it's any tips for difficult conversations when you haven't had a chance to develop a prior relationship?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. And I think what I've found is kind of, again, being the calmest person in the room, being really straightforward. I think, first of all, you want to plan out what you need to say and have some, frankly, key messages, right? So if, for example, I don't know, you've got an external counsel that the relationship has gone sour for some reason. First, you can have a conversation with the corporate affairs team if you want some help, but develop what your key messages are. What are you trying to accomplish? First of all, what's your end goal? Do you both want to walk away? Is it about an apology? Is it about, getting remuneration for something? what's the objective of that conversation, and being really clear about that. And then sticking with your key message and just being honest and authentic. You know, even if you were like, hey, listen, I know that this project didn't go the way that we wanted to for a variety of reasons. Don't necessarily assign outward blame. But yeah, I think that's great. David's comment back to Sally about having, you know, your 3 points clear and just sort of aligning yourself with that person again as a human being, right? I mean, if they've screwed up, they're going to know they've screwed up and they're going to want to make it right. So just being honest, authentic, having your objectives clearly articulated, and being clear about what you want to come away with. And then all you can do is your best. Like if you're not being aggressive or, you know, overly harsh in your communications, then I think you should be able to walk away with a successful outcome.
Cool. Thanks for that. And also David posted that 3 points clear on exactly the same thing as a response to Sally. Thanks for that. Thank you, Ruchika, very much. You're more than welcome to stay. Thank you very much. Well, let's get everyone unmuted and put the face in, or let's see the video. Make sure that everybody is awake. And let's do clap the hands as if we're in a physical event. So I'll start until.
Thanks, everyone. I really enjoyed presenting, and I hope you got some good takeaways from it. I spoke with Michael afterwards, and if anybody would like to have a follow-up conversation in any way, shape, or form, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Excellent. Thank you
Thanks,
very much.
everyone.
Cool. And now